Hi there! Last night when I was planning the next stage of the Stuart half beam, we had a surprise visitor, and it didn't half scare the bullocks in the field. So today I'm going to machine the 4 small bearings that fit on top of the base plate, and I'll also look to machine the beam support and try and fit it to a pair of those bearings. So the 4 bearings are made out of this piece of extruded brass, and I've just sort of tidied up the bottom of it just to make sure it's flat on this piece of 1000 grit, and just to double check, five six six zero, 5660, 5660. So I'm happy that we can now fit that in the 4-jaw chuck and face this end. Okay, so I've just roughly centred it using this dead centre. So what I'll do now is I'll just put a gauge on this round bit here and centre it up more accurately. Well, this is looking pretty close now. A while ago I put together this spreadsheet for the milling machine, and I must have got this formula from somewhere. But anyway, it covers 4 different types of metals. So I've got carbon steel, brass, aluminium and cast iron. So the idea being, if I've got a cutter that's say 10 millimeters in diameter, if I want to cut a piece of brass or mill a piece of brass, I should be milling at a speed of 1800 RPM. Now I also sort of use this for drilling and also for the lathe work. I'm not sure whether this is right or wrong, but for example, this piece of extruded brass that's going to be spinning is 30 millimeters in diameter. Now this only goes up to 16, but if I take 15 I should be turning at 1200 RPM. Obviously if it's 30 I divide that by 2. So on the lathe I'm going to turn at a speed of 600 RPM, and I'm going to face off the end. Now I've decided, with it being an intermittent cut, I'm going to slow it down a bit. So I'm going to cut it maybe around about 400. Looks alright. So now I'm just going to centre drill. So now I'm going to use this 3mm drill bit, and I was debating whether or not to drill sort of like the full width of 4 of these bearings, or whether just to do one width, then part it off and then hand ream it to 1/8 of an inch. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drill into a depth of around about 1/4 of an inch, then I'll part it off. Once I've parted it off, I'll hand ream it, then I'll come back to this, centre drill again, drill through another 1/4 of an inch with a 3mm drill bit, part it off and do it like that. So I've just put a parting tool in here, and I've used this gauge to position the parting tool 3/16 of an inch in. So I'll carry on and part off. Well, with this being an intermittent cut, I'm going to run the lathe around about 200 or 300 RPM, and I'll use the manual feed on the cross slide. Make sure everything's locked down as much as we can. Running at 340 RPM. Well, I use this hand reamer just to ream it out to 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and then I've cleaned it up with a bit of wet and dry. Could do with a bit more work and some brasso on it, but it's looking good so far. So what I'll do is I'll make the other 3 in the same way, and once I've done that, I can then drill the holes through on all 4 of them. Well, so far so good. Not looking too bad at the moment. I've just ordered a buffing wheel to see if I can get a better finish on this brass. Now I need to drill on each of these 2 holes 1 inch apart, which is 7BA clear. Now from edge to edge these measure round about 1.242 inches. So if I take 1 inch off that, I get to 0.242. If I divide it by 2, I get 0.121. So I've scribed a line 0.121 inches from each edge. So what I'll do is I'll go over to the mill, put one of these in the vise, and see if I can set it up to do some repeat drilling. Okay, so I've just put a parallel in here, put an edge stop on, and put the bearing in, tightened up the vise, put this edge finder on, and it's just found the edge. Now this edge finder is 6mm in diameter, so I've set the DRO to 0, and what I'll do is I'll move the table that way 3mm to actually find this edge. Now I know the width of these is 3/16 of an inch, which is 0.1875, so if I divide that by 2 I get 0.094, so I'll move the table in by 0.094, and then that'll give me the centre of this piece. So on the DRO I've zeroised the y-axis, so what I'll do is off camera I'll just use this edge finder to find the edge here, then I'll divide it by 2 to give me 3mm, and move the table that way 3mm to give me the edge, and then I'll move it in another 0.121, which should put me on that line there. Then I'll move the y-axis back to 0, and that should put me spot on the middle. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so I've just made a little mark with the centre drill, and that looks spot on. So I'll just use this 2mm centre drill, then I'll drill 2.6mm trying not to drill through this parallel, so I'll move the parallel to the right a little bit. So I'll repeat on the other side and then I'll do a test fit. So in theory this should just go around the other way. Just like that. Well, that looks pretty good. So I'll crack on and drill the other three. So I've just done a test fit with this piece of brass rod, and that looks pretty good to me. Very happy with that. Okay, so now I'm going to start work on this beam support. Now I've already tidied it up with a hand file and done a bit of work on the bench grinder, and I've just checked with the height gauge to see whether that's parallel with the surface plate, and it is. So I think what I'm going to do first of all is to put this in the milling vise like that, and I'm going to mill 10 thou off the top, or just enough to make it a nice flat surface. I don't want to remove this detail on this edge here, and then I'll swap it round in the vise and do exactly the same thing. Well, I've just decided to take 5 thou off here, so we'll see how it goes. Like I say, I don't want to remove this sort of detail edge here. I'll just take 5 thou off this end. So I've just positioned it on these parallels, and it's within about 5 thou. So I've put the height gauge on, just checking the height. So I think we'll be okay. So on this pattern, the relief, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take around about 7 thou off and see what that looks like. That bit looks okay, but on this edge here it's not actually cut much off, so what I'll do is I'll continue cutting round it at this cutter height and then see what it looks like. And I might have to reduce the cutter height by another 5 or 10 thou to get a uniform result. So I think the casting's actually bowed slightly. Certainly hardly touched anything here. So I think what I'm going to have to do is make a more aggressive cut of 10 thou. I'll do that off camera and then I'll get back to you. Well, that seems to have worked out okay. So I'll just switch it round and then do the other side, just following the same procedure. So I'll do it all off camera. So 10 thou off this side is working really nicely. Okay, so now I need to open the fork up to 3/8 of an inch wide. So I've centred the cutter on the centre line of the support. Now the cutter is 8mm in diameter, which equates to 0.315 of an inch. Now my target is 3/8 of an inch wide. So if I take off which is 0.375. So if I take 0.315 off 0.375, I get to 6 thou. So if I divide 6 thou by 2, I know I need to move the cutter this way 30 thou, and that way 30 thou. So what I'm going to do is I'll move it in increments of 10 thou at a time. So I'll cut out here to 30 thou, and likewise on the far end to 30 thou as well. Lock the y-axis. Okay, so now it's time to drill the holes in the side of the support. Now this hole here, which I've marked out, needs to be 1/8 of an inch from the bottom. And what I'll do is I'll centre drill and then drill with 1/8 of an inch drill bit down to a depth of 1/4 of an inch. Now on this side where the fork is, and again I've marked it out, this hole needs to be 5 15/64 from that hole. And what I plan to do with this one is I'll centre drill it, and then I'll drill through with a 3mm drill bit. Then I'll switch the whole thing round, repeat the process, but then I'll hand ream this to 1/8 of an inch right through the two holes. So that's the plan. So it probably doesn't look great on camera, but I've just put this little piece of brass bar through here just to check that it's 90 degrees with the upright, and it looks very, very good, so I'm happy with that. So all I need to do now is to make some little pins which go in the end here and through the bearings. Now strangely enough, these are made out of a piece of mild steel bar which is 5/32 of an inch. Why it's not 1/8 of an inch I don't know, so I've got to machine it down to 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and each has got to be 7/16 of an inch long, but I'll do that on the lathe off camera. Well, I never realised that making a couple of little pins would be such a faff really. I mean, obviously there should be 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and they are a good fit in the bearings, being 1/8 of an inch. However, when I drilled out the 1/8 of an inch holes in the casting, I used a normal drill bit and they ended up being slightly oversized. So I've ended up making some pins that are slightly oversized in the bit that fits into this, or slots into the casting. They're oversized by about 1/7 thou. Now I'm guessing on a final assembly they'll be Loctited in, but I did want a nice sort of snug fit, and I've managed to get that. So I'm quite happy with that so far. That looks a bit longer than what it should be. But anyway, I'll just have a trial assembly and see what it looks like. Well, I'm really pleased with the way that that's turned out. Feels really nice. No slack in it. And it's come up very nice as that finish. I can do a bit better on it, but very happy with the result so far. Well, that was an interesting little exercise, and it certainly took me longer than I thought it would. Can't believe those little pins. I thought that'd be dead straightforward. But anyway, I'm really happy with the result so far, and that beam support, I think the design on it looks superb. Really happy with it. But anyway, I hope you found the video of use, and I hope to see you later.